Today's lesson on transformations is lesson number 2, which is I can identify reflections. So we've already talked about translations, and now we are on to reflections. And a quick review from yesterday is first we need to list our translations in that coordinate notation. So that's in that fancy XY form. But before we can do that, we have to identify what's happening with my old shape to my new shape. Remember when they have that little tick mark, that prime notation, that implies it's my new shape. So this is my new shape in blue. My old shape is the one on the bottom in black. So first, let's see how have my shapes moved. To go from U to U, I go up. And that's the same for all of my coordinates. So when I talk about coordinate notation, what that would look like is it says I take my points, X, Y, in my original shape, and I'm going to move them. Because I don't go left or right, I don't move the X at all. It just is going to stay X. But I did go up, and that's on my Y coordinates, and I went up 4 units, so I would say Y plus 4. This XY is your original shape. This modified coordinate is how you've moved. And that's what coordinate notation means and how it looks. So if we look at number 2, identify old shape and new shape. New shape has that prime notation on it, so this blue is that new shape. And you need to identify how has the shape moved. So look at a point L to L. We went up and over. And we did the same on all of those points. So we have to figure out what that move was. So I took my original coordinates, and then I want you to pause the video and give this a try on your own. When I look at this, my X went to the left. So I took away values from X. I took 1, 2, 3, 4 units away from my X. My Y went up, and so I added 2 values to my Y. And there we have my coordinate notation. Moving on to our new material, a reflection. It's what you think. It's when you flip a shape over a line. Generally, we flip it over an axis. Think about when you look in a mirror. That is your reflection. It's a flipped image of yourself. That's all we're doing today, just on a coordinate plane. And so we have some rules. When we are flipping over the x-axis, so remember x-axis runs horizontal. I'm going to take a shape from above and flip it below. I'll say below is my new shape. When we flip it that way, my rule is my original coordinates change, but my x value wouldn't change, just the y's. I go from the positive y's to the negative y's. So x will stay the same, and the y will become opposite of its coordinate. When we flip over the y-axis, if here's my original and I reflect it, here's my new one. When I took my ordered pair xy, over the y-axis, my y's will not change, but my x values did. This time, the x are going to become opposite values, and y's will remain the same. And we'll see why that is as we do a few examples. But just note your 2 differences. X-axis, the y becomes opposite. Y-axis, my x's are going to become opposite. So just like yesterday, we first need to start by identifying our coordinates of the original shape. So when I look here, M, it's from my origin, it's over 3, so it's negative 3. And then it's up 2. So my M coordinate is negative 3, 2. My Y coordinate is negative 3, 3. T is on the origin at 0, 0. and Q is at negative 2, 0. So I have my original ordered pairs. Now it's asking me to reflect across the y-axis. So when I think about that, I like to highlight what I'm reflecting over. So here's my y-axis, it's running up and down. And just like a mirror image, I have to take my image from this side and flip it over my highlighted line to the other. The cool thing is anything that falls on that line will stay the same. So right here at the origin is still going to be my t. But remember, now we call it t prime. Q was at negative 2, 0. And when I flip it over that line, it needs to be reflected in the same spot on the other side. Q prime. M is going to be reflected over my highlighted line. It's 3 units away from that line, so it needs to be 3 units away from that line on the other side. M prime, and same with my Y. Y prime. When I connect my new dots, my new coordinates, I should make a reflection of that same image I started with. So notice my shape is the same shape, it's just reflected over that axis or my highlighted axis. Then we need to list our new coordinates and we'll make some observations. M prime ended up at the point 3, 2. Y prime ended up at the point 3, 3. T prime is still at that origin, and Q prime is at 2, 0. Remember when we discussed the rules for a reflection over the y-axis? It said the rule was x's will become opposite, y's will stay the same. And we can see that here. My x was at negative 3, and it became positive. My x was at negative 3, it became positive. When it's 0, can't change. And when it was negative 2, it became positive 2. But I also said all my y values would stay the same. 2, still 2. 3, still 3. 0, still 0. And 0, still 0. So notice only my x's change when I reflected across that y-axis. Here's my next problem. So we need to once again list my original coordinates. X is at 2, 0. G is at 4, 0. U is at 3, negative 4. And Q is at 2, negative 2. Now this time, when I read my directions, it says flip or reflect the image on the x-axis. So I like to highlight the line I'm reflecting it across. Here is my x-axis, and I need to reflect that image up. So I'm going to go from the bottom up to the top, like it's going to just swing on up. When I graph that new image, anything that's on my reflection line stays there. So x is sitting there, x prime will stay there. So x, it's the same for x prime. G is the same for g prime. However, Q was 2 boxes away from my line, so it needs to be, once again, 2 boxes away. Q prime. U was 4 boxes down, so it needs to be 4 boxes away. U prime. When I connect my dots in their new shape, it should look the same, just reflected like it was swung upright. When I rewrite my new coordinates, I already said x and g prime are going to be the same. X prime is still at 2, 0. G prime is still at 4, 0. U prime has moved. U prime is now at positive 3, positive 4. And Q prime is at positive 2, positive 2. When we discussed changes across the x-axis, our rule was my x's stay the same, y's become opposites. And we can see that here. My x's, 2, 2, 4, 4, 3, 3, and 2, 2. All my x's remained the same. What changed were those y values. 0 can't change, so those two stayed the same because they were on that line of reflection. But my -4 became opposite as +4, and my -2 became its opposite of +2. So we're making those connections mathematically and visually. At the top of this page, we just have a quick note on two special types of equations. If you have an equation that is just y equals a number, so maybe you have y equals 2, that is going to be a horizontal line at 2, because sometimes we don't reflect across the origin or the axis, and so we need to know that. The other one we might see is if x equals a number, such as x equals -3, and that's going to be a vertical line. And so sometimes instead of an axis, they tell us an equation, so we're going to have to draw in those horizontal or vertical lines at those points and then reflect across that line we create. And that's what we're going to see down here. So start by listing our coordinates. Our original ordered pairs for m is -3, 2, y, -3, 3, t is the origin, and q is -2, 0. And why we need to know about horizontal and vertical lines is for this problem right here. It says reflect the image across the line y equals 1. Because it is a y equals my number, it's going to be a horizontal line at the point 1. So I find where y is 1. Y is 1 right here. And I'm going to create a horizontal line there. So here's my horizontal line. This is going to be my line of reflection. So my image is going to be reflected around this line. We're going to kind of spin that image. And what that looks like, we need to figure out how far are the points from that line. So M is 1 point above that line. M prime is going to be 1 point below. Y is 2 points above. Y prime is 2 points below. We're going to flip our Q prime and our T prime. Then we reconnect that shape. Remember, it should be the same shape, just flipped over, which it is. And then we can go ahead and write our new coordinates. M prime is now at the point -3, 0. Y prime, -3, -1. T prime, 2, 0. And, oh, I have that wrong. X, Y, it should be 0, 2. Sorry about that. And Q prime is -2, 2. So what I want you to think about is when we flipped over my line, y equals 1. So reflection and over the line y equals 1. When I had my coordinates x, y, how did they change? Think about the relationship between my x values, which I've highlighted purple, which to me, that looks like a pretty easy relationship to notice. My x values haven't changed, so x will stay x. But then also think about what is going on with my y values. I went from 2 to 0, 3 to -1, 0 to 2, and 0 to 2. See if you can think of any relationships there as well.